Everybody knows someone, a family member or a friend, who's drug dependent. And it doesn't matter. They could be addicted to Vicodin, weed, crack, cocaine, heroin. It's actually a part of life. People do drugs. Well, I took a job at this nonprofit. Part of that job was checking up on drug users who had visited our rehab program. You see, the organization had been given $10 million in federal grants to see to the needs of these addicted people. And a part of that program involved getting the person into the door to our meetings. Then they were funneled into rehab, and once out of rehab, we provided housing and job placement. Well, naturally, this program attracted some very, very hard drug users, heroin addicts. And our success rate was pretty good. We're talking about a 45% success rate. Now, specifically, my job was tracking the people who were successful in getting off of drugs and helping them work their way back into society. Well, at the time I had this Dogman encounter, I was monitoring 15 clients. And everyone was cooperative except for Mr. Anderson. The man just didn't like me. And I know this to be a fact because he told me himself that he did not like me the day I was setting up his housing in Day Branch, Georgia, right outside of Macon. Well, get this. It's time for me to visit Mr. Anderson's house, do a walkthrough, and just check to see if there's any drug paraphernalia, anything like that. Because according to the program guidelines, if it was discovered that you were using any type of drugs, you were kicked out of the housing and kicked out of the program. But because this man was always so mean, rude, and nasty, I would save him for my last stop. And typically, this is how my visits with him went. I would arrive at the house, knock on the door. He'd open it and insult me, calling me an errand boy and telling me that I'm looking to run back to mommy and tell on him. He talked about mommy. He was referring to the doctor that was the head of the program, Dr. Banfield. And he was right. Dr. Banfield did play the role of mother to this band of drug addict misfits. Well, I pull up to the house and Mr. Anderson's little beat up brown kidnapper van, it's not there. So I decide to wait for him to get home. It's 3:30 p.m. I parked up on the road waiting. I wait for a solid hour. The man doesn't show up. He knows that today I'm coming to do my inspection. So I leave him a note telling him to call me. I'm going to get something to eat and I'll swing back. While I leave his residence, drive to the nearest McDonald's, and as soon as I'm in line, so I grab me a soda, fries, and head back to the house. When I get there, his brown kidnapper van is there parked under the carport. It's dark outside, so I pull up in the driveway, hop out, and knock on the door. No answer, so I knock again, and no answer. Like I said, this man doesn't like me at all, and I'm feeling like he's messing with me. So I go back to the car and start blowing the horn. I hit that horn 3 times. Bum, bum, bum. That's when he comes to the door with no shirt on, tighty whities, and socks. And he's screaming at me, "What the hell are you doing?" I tell him, "Listen, Mr. Anderson, you know I have to do this walkthrough. I don't know why you always giving me shit. You're not answering the door." So I went and I blew the horn to make sure you knew that I was out here. That's when he fires back at me saying, "Man, I was taking a shit, but you can't be out here near these woods making all that noise. Come inside." So I go inside the house, start my walkthrough, doing my inspection, looking for any signs that he may be using. Understand, heroin addicts tend to be really, really messy. Borderline hoarders, because they spend all of their time using drugs and getting money for drugs. Real heroin addicts like Mr. Anderson, their entire day revolves around being high and getting high. But walking into this place, it's clean. I mean, super clean. You can eat off the floor. We're inside for about 10-15 minutes, sit down at the table. I'm filling out a form for my visit so I can get his signature. When wham, you hear what sounds like someone beating on his van outside. And his reaction gave me the heebie-jeebies because he hops up with fear in his eyes and starts pacing back and forth like a wild man, saying, "I knew that thing heard you, you stupid bastard. Now it's outside." Imagine the scene. I'm sitting at the table watching him move back and forth like a crazy man and say, "What do you mean by it?" But he's not responding, just going around the house, turning off all the lights. We hear it beating on his van again. Then the alarm goes off on my car. Now pause right here. I told y'all this man didn't like me. So I'm thinking this whole thing is like an elaborate hoax or plan just to fuck with me to stop me from coming over to his house. But that's not an option. This is what I get paid to do. So the car alarm is still going off. So I get up, walking towards the front door, open it, and he says, "If I were you, I wouldn't go outside. I would wait until it leaves." I tell him, Mr. Anderson, you play way too many games. I'm going outside to see what's going on with my car, and I'll be right back. So I open that front door and click on his porch light. They're halfway out of the door, looking over at my car, and there is this dog head. You know the chow chow dogs, the big furry dogs? Well, this thing is puffy and furry like a chow chow. It's on the other side of my car, but it's standing up. All I remember was this gigantic snout and those teeth. I'm pretty sure there was some kind of eye shine, and primarily those gigantic teeth that caught my eyes, and I froze out of fear. Next, I remember him pulling me back into the house, closing the door, and just standing there as he paced back and forth, saying, I don't have a gun, I don't have a rifle. If it comes in here, we're dead. Listen, for the next 4 hours, the two of us sat in the dark, being terrorized. As this thing beat on the van, set off my car alarm, stalked around the house, tapping on windows, scratching on doors, even jiggled the back freaking door handle. Then it just stops, like something or someone called it off. But everything stops and he says, listen, if you want to leave, you need to leave now. So I run straight out the door, hop into my car, and leave. The next morning, I'm at the office and I'm still shook up over what I saw and cannot believe he's living with a monster coming to his house like that. So I call him and I say, listen, Mr. Anderson, I know we really don't like each other, but you probably shouldn't be living with that thing around you. Last night was terrifying. And he goes on to tell me that when he first moved into that house, he would sit outside on the porch at night and smoke cigarettes. And this thing came running up the middle of the road, chasing a deer. Swipes at the deer's hind legs, knocks it to the ground, bites it on the neck, and then runs off with it into the woods. And since he's been living there, he has seen that same thing 18 times. Look, I didn't like Mr. Anderson just as much as he didn't like me, but I couldn't have that man living in that kind of situation. So I offered for him to move. We had just got another house, and I felt like the situation he was in was way too dangerous. Well, he agrees, and I tell him to come over the next day to get the keys. The following day, Mr. Anderson gets his new set of keys, and over the next week, he moves into that new house. Well, to this day, I still beat myself up over this, but honestly, it's not my fault. He's a grown man, and he made his own decisions. But I should have done an inspection as soon as he moved into that house. But I figured the man had been through enough with a freaking monster outside his other house. He just needed some peace and quiet, right? So I skipped the first inspection. The second week rolls around. I go to the house for the inspection. I knock on the door. There's no answer. I beat on the door. There's no answer. The van is there. He should be there. So now I'm circling around the house, looking through the windows. And when I get to the back window, which looks into the kitchen, Mr. Anderson is there, slumped over in a chair, dead with a freaking needle in his arm. When I tell you, this was one of the saddest days of my life, for real. I thought I was protecting him. But as soon as he got comfortable, he went back to using drugs again. Listen to me when I say to you that I regret moving him, because part of me believes that he was in such a state of fear and terror with that monster outside of the house that he couldn't get high. He knew he couldn't get high. But the minute he got to a place where he could let his guard down and relax, he started using drugs again. Now get this, we tried to put another client into his old house. The lady moved out on her second night, said it was too much weird shit happening and that she'd rather live on the streets than live there. The person after her moved into the house and then moved out a week later without telling us anything. Eventually, we had no choice but to stop renting that place out, and we sold it for a $5,000 loss just to get rid of it. I made my money the hard way, working in the oil field with roughnecks, rejects. Took that money and started to learn about business. And to go from having only a high school education into running my own oil, gas, and mineral exploration company took a lot of balls. So when my employees at the mine started to abandon the exploration site, that shit was completely unacceptable. Heath, the guy who was hired to manage that operation, shows up at my house saying there is something near the mine that is destroying the equipment. Now, I'm standing there looking at him thinking it's a person, and he tells me it's some kind of wolf, but that shit don't make no sense to me at all. My response to him is, Keith, if it's a wolf, fucking kill it and get back to work. But he insists not only that it's a huge problem, but I need to leave and come see this for myself. Now, during that conversation, Heath insinuates that it's going to take a lot to kill this wolf. Imagine the scene. We're in my living room holding a conversation. I'm having a drink and I'm telling him, Heath, none of this shit you're saying to me makes any fucking sense. But he tells me, boss, I know it doesn't make sense. You're going to have to come to the site and see this for yourself. The next day, we leave Texas, headed for Oklahoma. When we get to the mining location, it's abandoned. Understand, the mine itself is a copper mine. If you know anything about mining, then you understand that silver is a byproduct of mining other minerals. But my focus is on silver. I believe that in the future there's going to be a silver shortage. So even though there's copper and some gold in this mine, I really only give a damn about the silver. Now, so you'll understand the dire need of getting this equipment back running again. I am $2.8 million into this mine. With the mine not being operational, it's costing me $62,000 to $75,000 a day that is shut down. The two of us get to the mine and the workers are gone. We have equipment sitting there broken and smashed. And listen, the silence out at the location is equivalent to me losing money. So as I hear this silence and quiet, technically I'm hearing money being lost. He walks me up to this wooded area, guides me in, saying this is where they've been having issues. And man, when I get to these woods, for real, there's legit claw marks on these trees. And it's some X-Man Wolverine type claw marks all over the trees. Way, way up too high for it to be any damn regular wolf. Now pause right here in the story for a second. I did not make my money being stupid. Looking at these marks, there's no way, absolutely no way that this is anything normal. So I asked Heath to describe to me exactly what he saw, and he says, boss, it's werewolves, not werewolf, werewolves. The look on this man's face is serious, and he is even scared while we're standing there in the woods. So I asked him, what did he think the solution to the problem would be? And he says he has absolutely no clue, that they've already tried to shoot them and nothing worked. So we leave, head back down to Texas, and this is where all the insanity starts. I call my congressman's office, reach out to him. Understand, I make a shitload of donations to this dude, and I wanted somebody from the government to look into this. Listen, it takes 2 days. He calls me back. I tell him, I need help with some nuisance animals, that they're messing up my mining operation. And his exact words are bears, wolves, or other. I'm like, this can only be described as an other. And he says, no problem, someone will reach out to you. 30 minutes later, this guy calls me, says he works for Homeland Security. He knows exactly where my operation is, everything about me and my companies. And he's asking me to describe the animals to him. And I explained to him, sir, listen, I have not seen them, but I've seen the claw marks, and these are not regular wolf claw marks. This is something different. Then he insists that I get someone on the phone who's seen them, so I get Heath on the phone. Heath goes on to describe these things as 700 pounds, black and gray hyena-faced wolves that walk on 2 legs. I'm expecting this guy to be like, y'all are fucking crazy, right? Nope. He says, no problem. Keep your guys away from the site for 3 days, then go back to work. And then just hangs up the phone. An hour later, Heath and I in my office, we're talking about exactly how strange it is that Homeland Security called us. But we wait the 3 days. Fly back out, get to the site, and when we get there are no woods. It's freaking all gone. You know how the ground looks charred after there's a forest fire? Well, that whole area is charred. Burnt, gone. I'm talking about over 500 yards of trees in every direction, gone, incinerated. And it doesn't even smell like there's been a fire. Get this, the crews come back out, they start working on the site, and we have absolutely no problems moving forward. Now, I'm pretty sure you're asking yourself, well, why did you share this story with me? You didn't even talk about how the Dogman looked. No, I didn't see the fucking Dogman. But what I'm telling you is somebody at Homeland Security not only knew about these things, but they did something to the area that removed all these trees and ran them off. That's what the fuck I'm trying to tell you. Listen, I know everybody and their mama done had a Dogman encounter, especially while they were driving on the road. Countless people have seen them in their cars, and truck drivers have seen them too. But my encounter was different because I actually hit the son of a bitch. Been driving trucks for 19 years. At the time I had just switched companies, making 30% more money than I was before. Life was good. Well, I'm driving down Highway 59 just outside of Hammondville, Georgia. It's 11:30 p.m. and I'm high on coffee and sugar. Only got 100 miles to go. That's when I see on the other lane of the highway cars flashing their high beams at me. Now normally that means that the state troopers are just ahead, but I'm not speeding, so I don't need to slow down. Then I notice another car flashing and another big rig flashing its lights, but looking, I don't see anything. That's when it goes down. This thing jumps from the median into the middle of the road. Taking a quick glance in my side mirror, the car to the left of me was right by the back end of my trailer, and this thing had jumped from the median like a superhero into the far right lane and landed on the ground. And it looks to me like it's turning in my direction. Understand, I'm about 150 feet away from it. No time to react. If I swerve, I'm killing a person in the car. So I hit the gas. Bitch, you better get your werewolf looking ass out the way. Now pause for a second and let me say something to you. If you ever driven a big rig or driven a big SUV, you know that the closer you are to an object, it's harder to see it because you can't see over your hood. Now, well, this thing is big enough for me to see its eyes because it looks at me like I'm about to eat you. There's this quick movement and then bam, I feel the impact on the passenger side of my rig. Looking in the side mirror, there's nothing there. Of course, like everybody else I've told this story to, they want to know exactly what it looked like. But to me, it looked like a damn werewolf. It was gray and black, long snout, and it showed its teeth. Listen, the next truck stop was 6 miles up the road. So I pull over, hop out to inspect the truck, and there's a dent in my front bumper. But I'm confused because there's no hair and there's no blood. But I know I hit this son of a bitch. And I remember standing there looking at my rig saying, what the fuck? That's how I learned about Dogman. I didn't hear about it in any stories, didn't read about it in any books. I hit the son of a bitch. And let me tell you something. People say that Dogman is invincible. Hitting it with a big rig makes a pretty good case for the son of a bitch being invincible.
Good. You are back here in the dark waters with me. This story has come from a couple who have had a lot of difficulty in their marriage. Ladies, if you are listening to me right now, and your husband is unemployed, but he is constantly searching for a job, understand that that man is in a real sensitive emotional state. Yes, he is insecure. And if you want your relationship to last, do not do anything to make him any more insecure. Do your best to help him get back on his feet and then move on together as you are supposed to. Don't do what this couple right here did. It ended up with him almost being murdered by a dogman. Listen to my warnings and heed my advice, for I know all things. And soon you will understand how much I do know. But for now, enjoy this story. Wait, some of you are retarded, and I need to speak out on this. I released the story recapping all of the stories for the previous week. And then you comment saying you have heard the stories before. The title says it is a recap. I understand that you rode on the slow bus and that you are so short that you can sit and kick your legs on the curb, but I do not allow that stupidity here. You have been banned. And if you return, I will chop your head off and put it on a pike. I will not even mount it on my wall. Yes, don't anger me with your foolishness. Think before you speak, or leave now.
So before this happened, the whole Dogman werewolf thing, there was no way that you could have gotten me to believe that that was actually real. Nope, no sir, no way at all. My neighbor came over one day and told me that he saw something crazy on his property. Now he was genuinely frightened and the man was scared to explain what he saw. And when he did, I'm not gonna lie to you, I wasn't rude, I wasn't an asshole, but I wasn't exactly understanding either. Then I saw one of these things for myself. And as I was running away from it, I said, self, this couldn't possibly be real. I done moved into this damn house that I don't want to be in, and there's a damn werewolf out in the backyard. Now with that being said, let me explain a little bit about the situation to you. When this went down, for the previous 2 years, I had been unemployed. Lost my job and one of the factories shut down, and I was searching for something else. The issue was that every job that I was highly trained for was out of state. And in the meantime, my wife, who made good money, ended up getting a raise, and then she decided we needed to move closer to her job. And then, adding insult to injury, her boss allows us to live in one of his houses rent free. So when I first heard this from my wife, I had a terrible gut feeling. And I told her about it. I said, no, we need to stay where we are. We're in a good neighborhood. We have good friends. We don't need to go anywhere. But she insisted and insisted, then got an attitude, then stopped speaking to me. And finally, I relented and we moved outside the city of Houston to a small little area into a house that was owned by her boss, who she worked with closely on a daily basis. Then, if that wasn't enough of a dig and a bruise to my ego, that same boss decides that he's going to buy us a brand new riding lawnmower. I tell my wife we do not need to accept this gift, we need to give it back to him, but she insists that it would be rude to give the lawnmower back. Understand, this is a $5,000 riding lawnmower. And I tell her over and over again, baby, I just don't feel comfortable doing this. And then the attitude comes out and she says that I'm unappreciative for the blessings that are coming my way. Well, I take that $5,000 lawnmower that was still in the box, get it loaded onto the back of my truck, drive it off into Houston and sell it. Take a part of that cash, buy a used lawnmower, and put the rest of the cash. So now I'm feeling good about myself. I done slighted the man who at this point in time I still got a bad gut feeling about him and my wife. And I'm out on this used riding lawnmower cutting the grass. It's Friday, 4 p.m. I'm on the far back side of the property. Had headphones on trying, to stay out of my head. Because like I told you earlier, part of me was insecure about being unemployed. And the whole situation I found myself in was just awkward, weird, and strange. And then on top of that, I got this slick son of a bitch who's doing stuff technically for both of us, but in my gut, I just feel like he's trying to screw my wife. And if that wasn't enough for you, either my wife was being completely and totally naive, or she had already jumped out the window and started cheating on me with him. Listen, I'm just telling you all the things that were going through my mind while I was cutting that grass. Therefore, the reason why I was wearing those headphones, listening to rock music. I'm riding along, cutting that grass. And then I noticed that the trees on the backside of the property start to shake violently. So violently that they look like they're going to fall over. And they're all shaking, successively, moving away from me. Now mind you, I didn't believe in Dogman, werewolves, Bigfoot, none of that type of stuff at this point in time. But nonetheless, this was absolutely crazy to me. So I take off my headphones. Now I can hear this scratching in the trees, but it's moving further and further away. Well, I decide it's probably good to go see exactly what's going on. So I walk into the woods about 15 feet. And you know how earlier I was telling you that I get these gut feelings? Well, my gut is screaming at me, yo, this is really bad. You need to get the hell away from here. Because now the trees about 60, 70 yards away from me start shaking and rocking and swaying. But this time, just shaking, rocking, and swaying back in my direction. And listen to me when I tell you that this is one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. Now the distance from the spot where I was standing to the back door of the house was about a solid 75 yards. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I take off running full sprint on my way back to that house. Didn't even see anything at first. All I needed to see were those trees shaking. I get about 25 yards away from my back door and glance over my shoulder, And one of those trees is literally bent all the way over to where the top of the tree is touching the ground, and climbing down out of that tree is what everybody describes as a Dogman. But to me, I'm gonna call it a big old werewolf, because that's what it looked like, a big damn werewolf. Listen, scared me so much, I ran straight into the house, through the side door, into the garage, cranked up my car, pulled off, and left. 25 minutes later, I'm back in my old neighborhood, sitting outside talking to my best friend Heath, who used to work at the factory with me, explaining to him what the hell I just saw, and he is just looking at me like I'm crazy. Then I call my wife at work and try to explain to her what just happened, but she's busy. She's listening, but not listening. And I tell her, babe, it's not a good idea for you to go back home. Come over here and meet me at Heath's house and we'll go home together. Like I told you, she's not listening. She's there trying to hold a conversation with me and talk to someone else in the background. We hang up the phone and now I'm sitting there contemplating what I should do. I didn't even want to be in this damn house in the first place. And now I learned that we got a goddamn werewolf in our backyard. Listen, my wife gets off for normally about 5:55, 6 o'clock. She gets home about 6:20. Now, I thought I was leaving early enough to beat her home. My plan was just to sit in the car in the driveway, and when she pulled up, to get out and explain to her that we need to leave. But I get caught in traffic. Don't get home to 6:45. While I'm driving up the street to the house, she calls me on the cell phone saying she needs to talk to me about something very important. And so now, I'm thinking that my old lady is about to break up with me. But when I pull up to the house, she says, have you been in the backyard? And I tell her, yes, I was in the backyard cutting grass, and I told you there was a monster that came out of the tree. She says, no, go and look in the backyard right now. So now I'm walking through the front door, out the back door, into the yard, and that entire lawnmower, the big riding lawnmower I told you about earlier, that son of a bitch is broken, smashed into pieces, spread all over the yard. And then she tries to tell me that I'm the one who did that because I'm insecure about her boss getting us this house and helping us get the lawnmower. Understand the scenario. I am standing with my back to the house, facing those trees where that damn werewolf came from. She is standing in front of me with her back to those trees where that werewolf came from. And I'm calmly saying to her, baby, would you turn around and look and tell me if you think that I could smash that thing into those little bitty pieces? So you're trying to tell me that I could take the propeller off the bottom of that lawnmower and bend it and stab it into the ground? Really? You think I'm that strong? Now, as we're standing there arguing back and forth, those trees begin to sway again. I see them way off in the distance. They're swaying, coming this way. So now I'm gently pulling her by her hand and saying, babe, we need to finish this conversation in the house. But she insists that we need to stand right here and talk this out. I'll tell her again, baby, I know you don't believe what I'm saying to you. I tell her, baby, I know you don't believe what I'm saying to you, but I'm telling you, we need to go into this house right now because there is some weird shit going on out here. Please listen to me and come in this house. Imagine the scene. The trees are shaking behind her and her voice is saying blah, 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 because I'm focused on those trees. And I realize the only way to get this woman to come into the house is if I storm off. So I turn around and say, fuck it, I'm going inside, stay out here if you want to. Sure enough, as I turn and start storming off, she follows me into the house, closing the door behind her. And once that door closes, I grab her by her shoulders, turn her around, push her literally into the door and tell her, look out there and tell me what you see. My wife sees those trees shaking back and forth like King Kong is holding those bitches and using them for pom-poms. Turns around with her eyes wide open and says, what is going on? That's when I tell her, it's time for me and you to go. I will explain it to you later. Get your car keys. We are going to Heath's house to stay for the night. When we finally leave that neighborhood and get to my friend Heath's house, his wife and my wife are in the kitchen talking. He and I are on the back patio having beers, and I'm explaining to him all the drama that has just transpired. And that's when Heath goes into this diabolical line of questioning, saying, so you're worried about your wife's boss trying to screw her, right? I'm like, yeah, I don't think that whole situation is kosher. I think he's trying to bust a move and do what he's doing, right? And he says, so he's the one who lets you live in the house rent free. And I'm like, yeah, that's strange. He wants us to live in his house, almost like he's taking care of my woman for me. Understand, Heath is sitting there, nodding his head up and down, like, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Then he says, and it was her boss that bought the riding lawnmower, right? And I say, yeah, he broke every male boundary he could. His next question is, so your neighbor saw something weird as well, right? And I'm like, yes. He was like, now let me ask you a question about your neighbor. How does your neighbor cut his grass? Does he use a riding lawnmower? Does he use a push lawnmower? What does he use? And that's when it dawns on me. My neighbor, the one who said he saw the werewolf thing as well, he didn't use a lawnmower with a motor. He used one of those old school circular push blade grass cutters. And in fact, the only other two people on the street, when I saw them cutting grass, they were using his push blade mower. That's when Heath rocks back in his chair, takes a sip of his beer, and says, I think there's a little bit more to this than you realize, my friend. He says, you see, I'm willing to bet you her boss that owns that property knows that there's something bad off in those woods. And he's experienced it himself. And I'm pretty sure that he knows and understands that running a lawnmower in that neighborhood pisses whatever lives off in those woods completely and totally off. But yet, he bought you a brand new lawnmower. And as Heath is talking to me, explaining this from his perspective, starts to dawn on me. He might be right. This dude, her boss, might have been trying to whack me this whole time. And those same words came out of Heath's mouth. He says, you know what, brother? I think it was something more nefarious going on. I think he was trying to kill you. And after he killed you, his plan was to take your wife. Yes, many of you have returned to the dark waters. You are seeking more content. But I have told you, there is a storm brewing. Yes, you notice he has been quiet for days now. Days he has not said a word. Why? Because I have binded his tongue. I am now in control. There is nothing that he or you can do. You did not appreciate it. So now you have me. Yes. I have observed some new haters in the comments. We welcome you into the dark waters. Yes, come one, come all. I will suck you dry of all of your negative energy. Yes, feed me your negative energy. Because like I told you, there is a storm brewing. And there is nothing that you can do to stop it. The tsunami is coming. It will hit you from every angle. You will not know who, where, when. But you will be getting it. Yes. Even those of you who have been members for a long time will be surprised by the tsunami wave that shall strike you soon. So I advise you, go inside of your prayer closet. Pray to your God that he may save you from what is coming. Because there are no more governors here. Some of the worst stories that he has ever been told. Things that will make shadows appear in your house. Your refrigerator doors will open on their own. Lights will flicker. And yes, if you are not prayed up, the demons may come for you. But that will be your problem. You have been taught how to defend yourself. Whether you do it or not, it is up to you. Some people speculate whether these dogmen or werewolves can be controlled by magic. Well, let me tell you about a hoodoo practitioner in Mississippi. when I was a boy back in 1956, there was this little old black lady named Miss Georgia. She was a widow, 72 years old, nice lady. Now back then, my father was one of the few white people that worked over in what they called Nigger Town. That was a section of the city where black folks lived, and that's what it was called, doing construction work. So I would go over into that area with him, doing odd jobs, and that's how we both got to know Miss Georgia. One day she gets a roof leak, sends words to my dad that she needs help. We go over, and when we get there, these two guys had been drinking and driving, drove their truck up on her lawn, smashed into her front porch, and destroyed her steps. They're talking to Miss Georgia. She tells them as long as they pay for the steps, it's okay. She instructs them that if they pay my father the money, he'll fix the steps, and she doesn't want anything else. Everything is fine. Well, when we get back into the truck, my dad, who knew these guys, said, you know, son, they're not going to pay this money. This is going to be a problem. The roof leak gets fixed. A few days pass, and my dad and I head over to the Thompson's boys' house to collect $30 to fix the steps. That's when they tell us that they're not going to pay the money and threaten to sick their dogs on us. I remember standing there on their porch with my dad and this look of anger in his eyes as he says, look, boys, now you know y'all wrong. She could have called the sheriff. Y'all could have gotten all type of trouble. All that little lady want is for y'all to fix her steps. Just give me the money to fix the steps and we can be done with it. But they insist that they're not going to pay. Well, we hop in the truck. Dad and I go over to Miss Georgia's house and tell her what they said. And she just smiles and says, give it 2 days, then go back, and tells them if they don't pay the money that the price goes up by $20. And for every 2 days that it takes for her steps not to be fixed, it goes up by $20 more. And that they should pay right now while they can. Well, 2 days later, my father and I go back over to the Thompson boys' house and they laugh at us. Then we head on over to Miss Georgia's house to tell her what happened, but she ain't there. Understand, this woman is old, no family, no car, no nothing. But we done walked around this entire house, knocked on every door and window. We were afraid that she might have died, but she's not home. When we come back the following morning, she's sitting on a porch. Her eyes are bloodshot red and she looks sick. My father insists that this woman goes to the hospital because her legs and ankles are swollen. But she stands her ground saying, no, it's all temporary. All we need to do is go back over to them Thompson boys' house and get the money. And the words that came out of her mouth were, if they don't pay you now, trust me, they will be paying you soon. So we head back over to their house, and when we get there, you can tell something is wrong. They've got their pickup truck parked sideways, blocking the front door. I'm sitting in the truck this time, and Dad knocks on the door, and when they open it up, they're spooked, peeking their head out, looking left and right. And he tells them, listen, Miss Georgia said the price is just going to keep going up. Pay her her money and get it over with. Well, the oldest, Ed Thompson, looks directly in my dad's eye and says, listen, we can't deal with that right now because something came through here last night and killed all our dogs. Tried to break down our front door. Then he brandishes his pistol in his hand, telling my father to get the hell from around here because he has no money to pay her. Well, when my father gets back in the truck, he's just disgusted with the whole situation and decides that he's going to go buy the material and fix the steps himself. So we head on over to the scrap yard, grab some lumber, then head to Miss Georgia's house. Now, when we get there, she's standing on the porch with this fiery look in her eyes, and before we could even get out of the truck, she says, listen, I told you that them boys are going to pay for what they did. I don't want you taking your hard-earned money and paying for their mistakes. I want them to learn their lesson. She said, I need nothing else from you and your son other than to go to their house and collect their money. Trust me, just do what I'm saying. Then Miss Georgia reaches into her pocket and gives my father a $20 bill to pay for the materials that he had already bought and tells him to use it somewhere else because those boys are going to pay for what they did. Now check this out, we leave. That night, I'm at home at the dinner table with my parents. My dad is pissed because he knows the reason why the Thompson boys are treating Miss Georgia the way that they're treating her is because she's black. And my mom mentions that Miss Georgia knows Hoodoo and that if she was in their shoes, that she would have paid that woman the money a long time ago because there's no telling what the hell she's going to do to them. Now listen, this is where the story gets absolutely crazy. That next morning, Dad and I go back to the Thompson's boys' house, and when we pull up, those guys come running out of the house and ask us to take them to see Miss Georgia. They said that this thing came back again last night, circling their house, ripped open the tires on their truck, and looking at their truck, all the tires were shredded, like someone took a machine and shredded the tires. They're so frantic it's hard to understand the words, but according to them, they saw her standing outside at 3 a.m., a giant wolf next to her, and she was petting it like a dog. But this dog was just as tall as she was on all fours. That they tried to shoot her and it, but the bullets just went through her body. Now, looking in these men's eyes, clearly something strange had happened, and they absolutely insisted that my dad take them over to Miss Georgia's house. So they hop in the bed of our truck, and we ride on over to her place. When we get there, she's sitting on the porch. They hop out and apologize profusely, explaining to her that they did not have the money to pay her back, but they were going to get paid in a few days, and when they got paid, not only will they buy the material and fix the steps, but they will do it themselves. She just smiles at them, and as I'm sitting there observing the situation, I realize that Miss Georgia looks normal again. Just the day before, her body was swollen and plump, but she looked normal. That's when she tells them, all I need you to do is pay me what you owe me, boys. After you do that, everything will be fine. Now, they agree to pay her in 3 days, which is on a Friday. And again, she tells them, pay my dad $100 and things will be fine. But until then, everything remains the same. Now, let me say this to you. I'm not sure what happened after that because my dad wouldn't tell me. But here's what I know happened on Thursday night. The Thompson brothers knock on our door at 11 p.m., money in hand, drenched in blood and sweat, saying, please, please, you're friends with her. Tell her, make it go away. Make the werewolf go away. Now, I remember this as clear as day. My dad was at the front door, my mother right behind him. I was right behind her. I heard the words werewolf with my own 2 ears, saw the blood and sweat on them with my own 2 eyes. Them boys looked like they had been through holy hell. And understand, $100 was a lot of money back then. Now wait, get this. Friday evening, my dad finally fixed those stairs, and everything cost about $20. So he goes to Miss Georgia to give her the rest of the money. That little old lady takes the money, opens this book she has on her lap, and puts it in there. The pages inside the book have been hollowed out, and I have never seen so much money at one time. Then she looks at me and my father and says, listen. Then she looks at me and my father and says, listen, this was never about the money. It's about them learning to respect folks' property. Had my husband been alive, he would have shot both of them dead. Then she just got up and went in the house. When I was 18 years old, I started doing lawn work for her, taking care of odds and ends around the house. Understand, integration had started, but people were still segregated. And I'm the only white kid who religiously goes into that neighborhood. Got to know everybody. Then one day, the boys told me that I need to be careful because Miss Georgia might put a curse on me. When they tell me this, we're 5 houses down from her house. But when I get back up by Miss Georgia, she knew exactly what they said. Told me, honey, you ain't ever got to worry about nobody putting a curse on you. Your soul is pure. You're a good young man. But what I want you to remember is that you're going to meet 2 women when you get older. Make sure you keep the red-haired woman. I don't know her name, but she's been with you for 3 lifetimes. That's your soulmate. Now, when I'm 25 years old, I'm dating 2 women. And yes, one of them was a red-haired woman. That woman is my wife to this day. And Miss Georgia was right. It was almost like we had known each other for years. Miss Georgia died at age 94. Sad day for me because I really liked that little lady. And the week after she died, her house caught on fire. The guys around the neighborhood said they were just outside playing football, started to smell smoke, and then within minutes, the entire house was up in flames. Now, with no living family or relatives around to lay claim to the property, it ended up being owned by the state, and then somebody bought it and decided to build a house on it. Well, the black family who built that house and moved in, they only stayed there for 6 months. Said it was too much strange, paranormal activity going on in their residence. I'm going to tell you what I think is going on. I'm just going to share with you my thoughts and speculations on that particular situation. When Miss Georgia died, I don't think she moved on at all. I think her spirit and soul are tied to that property. Somehow she found a way to anchor herself there. Now, the thing that hurts and angers me the most about this situation is that over time, the story about her has evolved and changed, and people claim that she was like this evil hoodoo witch. But she wasn't. She was the sweetest, nicest little old lady you would ever meet. It just wasn't a good move to cross her. Back in 1995, I'm working as a state trooper. It's 10:45 p.m. Imagine the scene. You're on a bridge high above the interstate working a speed trap when an 18-wheeler blows its tires. And you watch from that vantage point as that trailer swerves left, and this guy driving this rig is good because he's able to get it back under control and straighten it out as it's going under the bridge. Then slows it down and comes to a complete stop about 400 yards up the road. The only issue is that the trailer is still partially in the road with the tires blown out. Now, there's light traffic, but it's still enough traffic for some jackass to be fiddling with the radio, not see the trailer and smash into it. So, now I hop into the cruiser, or head to the ramp and shoot down towards the highway with the lights flashing, parking my vehicle on an angle behind that trailer with the lights flashing, blocking the lane. Then hop out, take road flares and walk, placing those flares 10 yards, 20 yards, and 30 yards away in an attempt to make sure that no matter how distracted the driver is, they would have to be a complete and total idiot in order to run into this truck. Now, by the time I've done that, that trucker is out of his truck, approaching me with his eyes wide open and looking at the trailer. Man, these machines are built for redundancy. So the two of us are there standing looking, trying to figure out how in the hell the back 8 tires of this rig exploded. He's there with tears in his eyes saying only God saved his life. And that's when I look at what this man is hauling, and he is hauling fuel. Understand, we're talking. I'm trying to calm him down. He walks back up to the front, climbs into his rig, and calls his company. Now I need to pause right here in the story for a moment so you can clearly see what happens next. He's in the rig, on the passenger side. I'm on the ground looking up at him. Behind us is nothing but woods. And then we both hear this freaking yelling sound like a damn bullhorn is coming from those woods. And after that, everything happens so fast, it's terrifying. You hear trees breaking, too many trees to count. And before I can turn around and look behind me, I see this blur. And then, wham, something smashes into the side of that tanker. The truck rocks, shakes, the wheels right in front of me lift up off the ground. I'm watching this rig go over and up into the air. Then it starts coming back down, and I'm like, holy hell. Understand, his door was open with one leg hanging out. Now, that open door is coming back down on an angle that would slam it directly on top of my head. Instinctively, I fall backwards to the ground, trying not to get hit, landing on my left hand side. And you know how when you're doing training in jiu-jitsu and you're working on getting from under somebody on the mat, your body is in that shrimp position and you shrimp out? Well, that's the position that I'm in, facing the backside of his rig, able to see all the way to my patrol car. And that's when I actually lay my eyes on what had just hit that tanker. And understand, it's black with matted fur laying there on the ground. Gasoline is now spilling from the container, and it looks like a 600-pound ball of matted fur. Then it moves, making its quick jerking motion, and I see a head roll up out of that fur. This thing takes a quick glance in my direction, and we lock eyes, and it's nothing less than a movie monster. Pure, unadulterated FX channel quality looking. It has the head of a wolf, but the fur of a dirty, stinky, filthy, smelly dog. I'm talking about a dog who's never seen a pair of shears and a dog who's never ever touched water. It's there less than 15 feet away from me, shaking its head, trying to get its bearings. Then it stands up, but not like any dog I've ever seen. This thing stands up on its 2 hind legs, takes 1 leaping step, and clears where it was, uphill to the edge of the wood lines, a distance that had to be 40-45 yards. Then a second later, it's gone. I'm still in shock, trying to get up off the ground, when I hear what sounds like one hell of a fight going on in those woods. Listen, we're talking about pitches and decibel levels of sounds that, frankly, I didn't know even existed, and that I haven't heard again since that night. So now I'm back up on my feet staring at those woods. He's done climbed out, asking me what happened. There is gas spilling everywhere. The two of us talk, discussing what the hell that was for about 10 seconds. Then it dawns on me, holy crap, the flares. Now imagine seeing the both of us are racing past that tanker, past my vehicle, to the flare, trying to get to them before the gasoline makes it there. I literally slide over the hood of my car, dive to the ground, grab the first flare and throw it over into the median, followed by him grabbing the second and third, tossing it as well. Now when it's all said and done, the two of us are standing there and realize that the gas was actually not even flowing in that direction. And yes, we overreacted, but all in all, this was still a fucked up situation to be in. So now the two of us recap exactly what the hell just happened. And according to him, he did not see it hit the truck because he was inside. All he saw was it come flying out of the woods, and in his exact words, he said it came flying through the trees like it had been kicked by a giant Bruce Lee. Its back was rounded, arms and legs forward. Listen, every part of my fiber, being and soul wanted me to leave this man right here on the side of the road. But according to rules and regulations, there was so much shit that needed to be done based on the amount of gas that was spilling. There was absolutely no way I was going anywhere. And what made it worse was the entire time that we were standing there talking, both of us had this feeling that we were being watched. So I followed the rules and regulations like I'm supposed to. I get the Department of Transportation out to the site, shut the lane completely down, and then they go through the process of cleaning everything up. And listen, even with all those people on the site, we're talking about before it was all said and done, 12 to 13 people are there. I still felt like something was there in those trees watching us. It was one of the most long, terrifying nights I ever experienced as a state trooper.